Every day, the world will offer you countless distractions, mirrors that reflect only the surface of your existence. But you must ask yourself, will I be content to live in reflection, or will I dive deep into the mystery of my own becoming? Education, in its truest form, is not the accumulation of facts, but the awakening of the soul. You are not here to conform, you are here to transform. To stay ahead of 99% of people, you must walk the path few are willing to tread, the path inward. Most seek information, few seek wisdom, and fewer still have the courage to face the truth that learning is not comfortable. It is disruptive. It peels back the illusions you've built to protect yourself from the vastness of your own potential. But if you educate yourself every day, not just in books, but in life, in silence, in struggle, you will become someone the world cannot ignore. The masses repeat what they are told. They echo society's voice, mistaking noise for understanding. But you must become the architect of your own consciousness. You must choose what enters your mind and shapes your being. The world may teach you how to make a living, but you must teach yourself how to make a life. Every day you do not grow, a part of you shrinks. Every day you do not question, you slip deeper into unconsciousness. Do not wait for someone to give you permission to rise. You are not here to be a copy of the collective. You are a singular flame in the dark, meant to burn with purpose. The mind that is fed with intention becomes a weapon of transformation, not to conquer others, but to conquer the chaos within. To educate yourself daily is to meet the unknown within you and ask, who am I becoming? It is to say no to stagnation and yes to evolution. And as you do, you will separate from the crowd, not because you judge them, but because you are called to something greater. The 99% live by default. The 1% live by design. They read, they write, they reflect. Not because they must, but because they understand that the soul hungers just as the body does. You are not your past. You are not your titles. You are not what others think of you. You are becoming. And becoming requires education, not from institutions alone, but from every sacred moment you breathe. Life is your classroom. Silence is your mentor. Pain is your test. And purpose is your diploma. Do not ask, how can I be better than others? Ask, how can I be truer to myself? For in the quiet pursuit of truth, you will find a power greater than ambition. A power that changes not only your path, but the world itself. Let others sleep in the comfort of ignorance. You wake up every day and learn. Learn to think, learn to feel, learn to live. And in doing so, you will walk among the rare few who are truly alive. To understand the idea that inner transformation precedes outer growth, one must first reflect deeply on the nature of change itself. Most people desire improvement in their external circumstances, more wealth, better relationships, recognition, influence, and success. But few realize that without a shift in the internal world, all external gains remain fragile, temporary, or even meaningless. The world we see is a mirror of what lies within us. If the mind is chaotic, even a peaceful environment will seem overwhelming. If the heart is full of resentment, even acts of kindness may be interpreted as threats. Inner transformation is not just one component of progress. It is the very foundation upon which all lasting change is built. Consider for a moment how a tree grows. Its strength is not in the height of its branches, but in the depth of its roots. Without strong roots, the tree cannot survive the storm. In the same way, without inner grounding, emotional resilience, spiritual alignment, intellectual clarity, a person cannot withstand the inevitable storms of life. This grounding cannot be purchased, inherited, or faked. It must be cultivated through daily self-examination, learning, and the courage to confront the darker parts of one's own psyche. Only then can one grow in a way that is sustainable, meaningful, and truly unique. Education, then, must begin with the self, To educate oneself daily is not merely to absorb facts or chase achievements. It is to ask uncomfortable questions. Who am I really? What beliefs have I inherited without scrutiny? What emotions control me? What am I avoiding? This is the path of inner transformation. It is not linear, and it is certainly not easy. It demands honesty, brutal honesty, not with others but with yourself. When you look in the mirror of the soul and choose to stop pretending, that is when true education begins. That is when transformation starts to take root. The reason most people stay stuck is not because they lack resources or opportunities, but because they refuse to look inward. The outer world offers distractions, entertainment, gossip, social media, and shallow opinions. It tempts you to live outwardly, to react rather than reflect. But those who rise above mediocrity do so not by avoiding the world, but by mastering themselves. They understand that the mind, if left untrained, becomes a prisoner of habit, fear, and delusion. They educate themselves not for vanity, but for liberation, from ignorance, from conditioning, from limitation. The unconscious mind plays a powerful role in shaping our behaviors, attitudes, and even our destiny. You may think you are making rational decisions, but more often than not, you are acting out patterns imprinted long ago by family, culture, trauma, or unhealed wounds. Inner transformation requires that these unconscious forces be brought into the light. You must become aware of your shadows, the parts of you that you reject or repress. These shadows don't disappear by being ignored. They fester and distort your relationships, your goals, and your sense of self. Daily education helps to shine a light on these hidden forces. Through reading, reflection, meditation, journaling, or meaningful conversations, you begin to reclaim pieces of yourself that were lost in the noise of the world. This process is not just psychological, it is spiritual. It touches the core of your being. The more you educate yourself with sincerity and depth, the more you realize that knowledge is not merely about data, it is about alignment. The mind, heart, and soul must move in harmony. Inner transformation means that you begin to live in integrity, not perfection, but authenticity. You no longer chase approval. You no longer seek validation from the external world. Instead, your compass is internal. You ask yourself, is this true for me? Is this who I am meant to become? In a world obsessed with speed and results, inner transformation may seem slow and invisible, but it is the only transformation that lasts. Anyone can build a facade of success, but only those who have done the inner work can sustain it with grace and peace. The ego may crave applause, but the soul craves depth. True education nourishes the soul. It does not inflate the ego, it quiets it, gently guiding you to something greater than your temporary identity. There is also a divine aspect to this journey. When you begin to educate yourself from within, you begin to sense a deeper intelligence at work in your life. You start seeing patterns, synchronicities, and signs that were once invisible. This is not superstition, it is awareness. When the mind becomes clear, the world becomes a sacred text. Every experience becomes a lesson. Every challenge a teacher. You begin to realize that life itself is conspiring to help you grow, but only if you are awake enough to see it. The masses often ignore this truth. They look outside for answers. They copy others, follow trends, and wait to be told what to do. But you are not here to conform to the unconscious majority. You are here to become fully yourself, and this becoming requires inner transformation. It requires solitude, patience, and discipline. It requires that you turn your pain into wisdom, your doubt into curiosity, and your fear into courage. The most powerful people are not those who control others. They are those who have mastered themselves. They have transformed their inner world so profoundly that the outer world begins to rearrange itself in their favor. They no longer seek to escape life. They engage with it fully, knowing that every experience, good or bad, is a portal to deeper understanding. This level of transformation does not happen by accident. It is a daily practice, a commitment to inner evolution. You must choose each morning to educate yourself, not just by reading or watching or listening, but by being present with yourself, by noticing your thoughts, by questioning your assumptions, by listening to the still, small voice within that whispers, "There is more." You are not just a body. You are not just a mind. You are a soul on a journey of remembrance, remembering who you are beyond the noise, beyond the expectations, beyond the illusions. Inner transformation is the remembering of your essence, and only through this remembering can you grow outwardly in a way that is noble, powerful, and deeply rooted in truth. Educate yourself every day, not because you are broken, but because you are becoming. Not because you lack, but because you are preparing to give. The world does not need more informed people. It needs more transformed people. People who have seen the depths of their own darkness and brought forth light. People who live from purpose, speak with clarity, and act with courage. So as you walk this path, remember, your greatest work is not what you build, but who you become. And who you become is shaped, moment by moment, by what you choose to learn, face, and grow through each day. Let that journey begin. Every morning, with every breath, in every decision. This is how you rise. This is how you lead. This is how you stay ahead, not just of others, but of who you were yesterday. To understand the power behind the statement, "The unconscious mind holds the key to mastery," one must be willing to abandon the illusion that we are fully aware of our thoughts, actions, and motivations. The truth is, most of what drives our behavior does not originate from conscious decision-making, but from deep-rooted, unconscious patterns formed throughout our lives. These invisible forces operate like software running silently in the background, shaping our habits, determining our reactions, and often sabotaging our goals without our awareness. Mastery, whether of a skill, of life, or of oneself, cannot be attained merely by conscious willpower. It demands a confrontation and integration of the unconscious. The unconscious is not a dark abyss filled with only pain and fear. It is a vast and fertile realm containing everything you have forgotten, ignored, repressed, and overlooked. It holds your hidden talents, your dreams, your unresolved wounds, your ancestral imprints, and the stories you've told yourself to survive. Every emotion you did not express, every truth you did not speak, every thought you felt ashamed to think. These live in the unconscious. To unlock the fullness of your potential, you must learn how to engage with this hidden realm, not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a partner to be understood. Most people, when seeking self-improvement, focus solely on the surface. They read books, attend seminars, follow motivational advice, and set ambitious goals. And while these actions can be valuable, they often fail to produce lasting change because they do not address the root of the issue. The conscious mind is like the tip of an iceberg, visible but small. The unconscious is the massive structure beneath the surface, and it dictates most of our behavior. Until you become aware of it, you will continue to relive the same cycles, choosing the same types of relationships, repeating the same mistakes, falling into the same emotional traps, without knowing why. Daily education becomes powerful not merely when it teaches you new ideas, but when it helps you illuminate what is already within you. Each day, you must seek not just to acquire knowledge, but to integrate it, allowing what you learn to shed light on the inner architecture of your psyche. You may read about courage, but until you understand the fear that has silently dictated your decisions for years, courage will remain a concept rather than a lived experience. You may study discipline, but unless you confront the unconscious belief that you are destined to fail, no routine or habit will truly stick. You may learn about love, But unless you heal the part of yourself that feels unworthy of being loved, no amount of advice will change how you relate to others. The path to mastery requires deep inner excavation. It demands that you become an observer of your inner world. This means paying attention to your dreams, your emotional triggers, your fantasies, your fears, and the patterns that repeat in your life. It means asking questions that challenge your ego. Why do I react so strongly to this? What am I avoiding? What am I afraid to feel? What story am I unconsciously living out? These questions are not meant to wound you. They are meant to wake you up. The unconscious speaks not in logic, but in symbols, emotions, and repetitive life themes. When you start to listen, you begin to reclaim the power you unknowingly gave away. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in your life will come not from trying harder, but from seeing deeper. When you bring unconscious patterns into conscious awareness, they begin to lose their grip on you. You begin to choose rather than react. You begin to create rather than repeat. You begin to live rather than survive. This is the beginning of mastery, not mastery over the world, but mastery over the self. And this mastery flows outward, touching every area of your life, your relationships, your work, your health, your creativity. In the unconscious lies both your shadow and your gold. The shadow contains everything you have denied in yourself. Your selfishness, your jealousy, your rage, your vulnerability. These aspects, if ignored, will sabotage your life from behind the scenes. But when embraced and understood, they become sources of strength. The person who integrates their shadow becomes powerful not because they are perfect, but because they are whole. They are no longer controlled by hidden forces. They are guided by inner truth. Likewise, the unconscious holds your untapped potential. Many of your gifts remain dormant because they were not validated in childhood, or because they contradict the identity you built to be accepted by others. You may have the soul of an artist, but were taught to be practical. You may have a visionary mind, but were told to follow rules. You may possess deep emotional intelligence, but were shamed for being sensitive. These gifts often go underground, buried in the unconscious, but through daily inner work, reading, reflecting, journaling, meditating, you can begin to unearth them. You can bring your authentic self into the light and live in alignment with who you truly are. This is why daily education must go beyond external knowledge. It must be rooted in introspection. It must encourage you to connect the dots between what you learn and what you feel, between what you know and what you believe, between the life you have and the life you desire. The unconscious will always reveal the truth, but only to those brave enough to look. Most people live as strangers to themselves. They fear the silence, the stillness, the solitude required to face what's inside. But if you choose to walk this path, you will be rewarded not just with insight, but with liberation. To live unconsciously is to be a puppet of past wounds and inherited beliefs. To live consciously is to become a creator, capable of shaping your destiny with clarity and intention. Mastery, then, is not about controlling every outcome. It is about understanding the inner forces that shape your actions and making peace with them. It is about turning confusion into clarity, pain into purpose, chaos into order. It is about becoming whole. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is a daily practice. Every day you must educate yourself, not to impress others, but to know yourself. You must study your patterns, question your assumptions, and invite new perspectives. You must be willing to feel uncomfortable, because discomfort is the gateway to growth. You must be willing to change your mind, because fixed beliefs block new truths. You must be willing to lose who you thought you were, so you can become who you truly are. Mastery is not about superiority. It is about depth. It is about living with intention, moving through the world with awareness, and honoring the sacred complexity of your inner life. The unconscious mind is not something to fear. It is a treasure chest waiting to be opened. And once you do, you will discover that everything you were looking for outside, confidence, clarity, creativity, power, was always within you. So if you truly wish to rise above the 99% who live on the surface, commit yourself to this inner journey. Let your daily education be a map that guides you not just through the external world, but into the mystery of your own soul. And there, in the quiet depths, you will find the key to mastery. Consistency is often misunderstood in the modern world. People associate it with routine, repetition, and sometimes even boredom. But in truth, consistency is one of the most profound spiritual and psychological disciplines a human being can cultivate. When approached consciously, consistency is not the dull repetition of tasks. It is the sacred rhythm through which greatness is born. It is the daily commitment to inner growth, regardless of external circumstances. And over time, it becomes the most powerful force that separates those who merely wish for transformation from those who actually experience it. This is not about perfection. It is about the unshakable resolve to return to the path again and again, even when no one is watching, even when progress seems invisible, even when your doubts are louder than your dreams. To educate yourself every day is to make a covenant with your future self. You are saying, I will show up for you, no matter what. You are building a bridge from who you are to who you are becoming, and each day's effort is a stone laid in that bridge. Without consistency, knowledge remains scattered. Insights are forgotten. Moments of inspiration fade into dust. But when you engage daily in the practice of learning, reflecting, and integrating, you begin to build something within you that cannot be taken away. You build character, you build clarity, you build power that does not depend on outside validation. There is a subtle but crucial difference between motivation and consistency. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls with your mood, your energy levels, your surroundings. But consistency is anchored in something deeper. It is anchored in decision, in meaning, in will. You may not always feel like learning something new, like writing, like studying, like practicing. But when you choose to do it anyway, you reinforce your identity as someone who honors their path. This is what sets you apart from the masses. The 99% wait to feel ready, inspired, or supported. The 1% understand that mastery is born not in bursts, but in slow, steady dedication. Consistency transforms not only your knowledge, but your perception of yourself. Each time you show up, you are rewriting the story of who you are. If you used to see yourself as lazy, undisciplined, or incapable, the daily act of showing up disproves that story. Slowly, you begin to see yourself differently, not because you repeated affirmations, but because you built evidence through action. And as your self-image shifts, so too does your behavior, your confidence, your presence. You no longer hope for change, you embody it. This is why consistency breeds transcendence. It elevates you beyond the limitations of mood, resistance, and self-doubt. It creates a flow, a sense of rhythm in your being. What once felt difficult becomes natural. What once seemed foreign becomes second nature. The mind, through repetition, adapts. It becomes sharper, more focused, more resilient. The soul, through devotion, begins to awaken. It finds beauty in the process, not just the result. And in this awakening, you begin to experience a quiet power, a deep, grounded certainty that you are on the right path, even if no one else sees it yet. Many people give up not because they lack talent or potential, but because they lack the patience to be consistent. They start something with enthusiasm, only to stop when it becomes hard or boring. But the truth is, anything worth mastering will pass through a phase of difficulty and monotony. These phases are not signs of failure. They are invitations to deepen your commitment. If you quit every time progress slows, you remain at the surface of life. But if you persist, if you continue learning, evolving, and showing up even when the reward is not immediate, you begin to access levels of excellence that others will never reach. There is a sacredness in repetition. Think of spiritual practices, meditation, prayer, chanting, breathwork. These are not one-time events. They are consistent rituals through which transformation occurs. The mind begins to quiet, the ego begins to dissolve, the deeper self begins to emerge. The same is true of educating yourself daily. It becomes a ritual, not for information, but for transformation. You are not just adding facts to your mind, you are reshaping the very structure of your consciousness. It is important to remember that the world rewards consistency more than bursts of genius. A person who studies 1 hour a day for 10 years will surpass the one who crams for 10 hours a day for a month and then gives up. The brain thrives on consistency. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition. Habits become identity, and when you commit to daily growth, the world around you begins to shift. Opportunities open. People notice your depth. You begin to lead not by noise, but by presence, and that presence is born from a life lived in steady alignment with your highest values. One of the most overlooked aspects of consistency is its relationship to trust. When you are consistent with yourself, you begin to trust yourself. This self-trust becomes the foundation of inner peace. You no longer live in fear of breaking your promises, of sabotaging your efforts, of collapsing under pressure. You know who you are because you have proven it through your actions. And when you trust yourself, others begin to trust you as well. Your words carry more weight. Your intentions are felt more deeply. Your leadership becomes natural, not forced. Yet, the path of consistency is often lonely. There will be days when no one understands your commitment. Days when others are resting, indulging, distracting themselves, and you are studying, reflecting, growing. But it is in these moments that your future is being built. Greatness is not forged in the spotlight. It is forged in solitude, in silence, in sacrifice. The question is not whether you can be great, but whether you are willing to pay the price of becoming who you are meant to be. And that price is paid not in one grand gesture, but in countless daily choices. There is a kind of magic that reveals itself only to the consistent. It is the magic of compounding growth. One day of education may not change your life. 10 days may not either, but after 100 days, 1,000 days, your mind becomes a different instrument. Your awareness sharpens, your energy stabilizes, your perception deepens. You begin to see what others cannot see, hear what others ignore, and act with a precision that comes from inner mastery. This is not talent. It is the fruit of consistency. Your commitment must be stronger than your mood. Your purpose must be stronger than your excuses, and your vision must be stronger than your fear. This is the essence of spiritual discipline, not to force yourself, but to choose yourself. Not to impress others, but to impress truth upon your soul. You were not born to drift. You were born to direct your life with wisdom and intention. And that direction begins with small, consistent steps taken every day. Do not underestimate the power of tiny efforts repeated over time. A single drop of water, falling consistently, can carve through stone. A single truth, reflected upon daily, can break through years of conditioning. A single page read with presence can open doors in your mind you never knew existed. And a single moment of daily commitment, practiced over a lifetime, can place you far beyond the reach of those who live by impulse alone. In this way, consistency becomes a divine act. Each day you educate yourself, you are honoring your potential, offering a silent prayer to the future and planting seeds of greatness that will bloom in time. You may not see it now, others may not see it either. But the transformation is happen in quietly, invisibly, powerfully. And one day, when the fruit appears, it will be undeniable. You will not need to explain yourself. Your presence will speak for you. Your actions will echo your truth, and your life will be the testament to what consistency, rooted in purpose, can truly create. The vast majority of people drift through life on autopilot, rarely questioning their own thoughts, beliefs, or behaviors. They live under the illusion that they are free, that they are in control, but in truth, they are bound by invisible chains, chains made of inherited ideas, social conditioning, emotional wounds, and unconscious fears. This is the condition of the 99%, not because they are incapable, but because they have never dared to question the framework of their own existence. The rare few who rise above this state, the 1%, are not necessarily more intelligent, more talented, or more fortunate. They are simply more awake. They live with a heightened awareness that enables them to see through illusions, challenge false narratives, and make choices rooted in truth rather than programming. And this awareness is not a gift, it is cultivated. It is earned through daily self-education, relentless self-inquiry, and a refusal to live passively. Awareness is the foundation of liberation. Without it, you are not really living, you are merely reacting. Everything you experience is filtered through unconscious assumptions you never chose. You believe what your parents believed, fear what your culture fears, desire what the media told you to desire. Your mind becomes a container for the thoughts of others, and you mistake that container for yourself. The process of educating yourself daily is not just about acquiring information. It is about peeling away the layers of conditioning that have kept you blind. It is about returning to your original nature, not what you were told to be, but what you actually are. And this return is not passive. It requires effort, discipline, and the courage to face what you find within. To educate yourself is to enter into a sacred relationship with truth. Not objective truth as society defines it, but inner truth. The kind that cannot be taught, only remembered. This remembering comes when you slow down, reflect, and ask the right questions. Why do I believe what I believe? Who benefits from my ignorance? What part of myself have I silenced to fit in? What patterns keep repeating in my life? The 99% rarely ask these questions because doing so would disrupt their comfort. But comfort is the enemy of growth. It lulls you into a trance where you trade authenticity for approval, freedom for familiarity, and purpose for distraction. Daily awareness requires that you become a witness to your own mind, that you observe your thoughts without blindly identifying with them. You begin to notice how easily you are influenced, how reactive you are, how often your emotions override your judgment. And this noticing is not meant to bring shame, it is meant to bring clarity. When you see how you've been living, you regain the power to choose differently. You stop running on programs and you start creating from presence. This shift from reactivity to awareness is where transformation begins. Those who live with awareness see things others miss. They recognize the subtle manipulations in language, media, and culture. They notice the emotional triggers that keep people trapped in cycles of fear and desire. They perceive the hidden motivations behind actions, the need for validation, the hunger for control, the avoidance of pain, and they do not judge these things, they simply observe, because with observation comes understanding, and with understanding comes freedom. When you understand your own mind, you are no longer controlled by it. You begin to act from your highest self rather than your wounded self. This heightened awareness also leads to greater compassion. When you see how deeply people are trapped in their own unconscious suffering, you no longer take things personally. You recognize that most hostility, judgment, or manipulation is not about you. It is about the other person's unhealed wounds. This understanding allows you to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. You become a calm presence in a chaotic world, not because you are superior, but because you have done the inner work to anchor yourself in truth. Awareness also sharpens your intuition. When you clear the noise of conditioning, your inner voice becomes louder. You begin to sense what is right for you, not because it was prescribed by others, but because it resonates with the core of your being. You start making decisions based on alignment rather than fear. You stop chasing empty goals and start moving toward what actually matters. Your life becomes an expression of your soul, not your survival instincts. But this level of awareness is not reached by accident. It is cultivated through intentional practice. Every day you must tune in. You must set aside time to read, reflect, meditate, journal, question, and observe. You must create space in your life for silence and solitude, for these are the gateways to inner clarity. The world will constantly try to distract you, to pull you back into the collective trance, but you must resist. You must remember that every time you choose awareness over distraction, you are reclaiming a piece of yourself. And as you become more aware, you begin to see the illusions of the external world more clearly. You realize that success, as commonly defined, is often a trap. That status is a poor substitute for purpose. That busyness is often a mask for emptiness. That consumption does not equal fulfillment. These realizations are painful at first. They shatter the comforting lies you've built your life around. But in the ashes of those lies, something real emerges. The desire to live authentically, to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. With this awareness also comes responsibility. You can no longer blame others for your unhappiness because you see how your own unconscious patterns created your reality. You can no longer pretend you don't know because now you do. Awareness forces you to take ownership of your life, not from guilt, but from power. You realize that you are the author of your story, not a victim of circumstance. And while this truth is sobering, it is also liberating. Because if you created your current reality unconsciously, you can create a new one consciously. This is why the 1% live differently, not because they are born lucky, but because they have chosen to live awake. They use each day as an opportunity to expand their awareness, to deepen their understanding, to elevate their consciousness. They are students of life, not in a passive sense, but in a radical, committed way. Every conversation, every challenge, every emotion becomes a lesson. Every trigger becomes a mirror. Every experience becomes a teacher. And through this mindset, they rise, not above others, but above their former selves. In contrast, the 99% cling to certainty. They fear change, avoid discomfort, and outsource their thinking to others. They follow trends, repeat slogans, and defend beliefs they never examined. They live in echo chambers of thought and habit, mistaking familiarity for truth. And in doing so, they sacrifice the very thing that makes life meaningful, the journey of awakening. To rise above this, you must choose differently. You must be willing to see what others refuse to see. You must be willing to question what others accept. You must be willing to grow even when it hurts. Awareness is not a destination. It is a state of being. It is the willingness to meet each moment with openness, curiosity, and honesty. It is the discipline of staying present, even when it's uncomfortable. It is the courage to see yourself clearly, without masks or denial. And it is the humility to know that there is always more to learn, more to release, more to awaken. Each day you educate yourself, you are polishing the mirror of your consciousness. You are wiping away the dust of illusion. You are becoming more attuned to reality, not as others define it, but as it truly is. And in this clarity, you find peace, not because life becomes easy, but because you become grounded in truth. And this truth becomes your compass, your power, your light. The world we live in is not short on information. We are flooded with data, opinions, and voices every second of the day. But amid this overwhelming noise, what is scarce is reflection, the deep, internal process of turning knowledge into wisdom. Most people consume content without ever stopping to ask what it means for their lives, their beliefs, or their purpose. They scroll, watch, and listen endlessly, but they rarely sit with a single idea long enough to let it change them. This is the great tragedy of modern life, not the absence of knowledge, but the absence of inner integration. To stay ahead of 99% of people, you must do what they won't. You must reflect. You must become intimate with your own thoughts, deliberate with your attention, and purposeful with your growth. Reflection is not idle daydreaming. It is a sacred pause in which the soul catches up with the mind. It is the act of asking deeper questions, of tracing thoughts to their roots, of examining the patterns of your life not with judgment, but with insight. It is where understanding begins, where transformation takes root. When you reflect, you allow the experiences of your life to become teachers. You stop moving blindly through events, and instead, you begin to harvest meaning from them. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every success becomes a blueprint. Every challenge becomes a doorway into deeper awareness. Reflection turns ordinary living into extraordinary growth. To educate yourself daily without reflection is to eat without digesting. You may take in a lot, but your system becomes overloaded, bloated with unprocessed insights. Nothing truly nourishes you because nothing truly sinks in. It is not how much you read or how many hours you study that determines your growth. It is how deeply you engage with what you've taken in. A single sentence, reflected upon deeply, can change your life more than an entire book skimmed without presence. The mind that reflects is like fertile soil. It absorbs, processes, and transforms seeds into fruit. Reflection requires solitude, and solitude requires courage. Most people are afraid to be alone with their thoughts because it means confronting what lies beneath the surface. In silence, all the distractions fade away, and what remains is true. Raw, unfiltered, often uncomfortable. You may find unhealed wounds, unresolved guilt, repressed desires, or truths you've been avoiding. But this is not something to fear. It is a sacred encounter, because you cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot change what you will not name. When you reflect, you shine the light of awareness into the dark corners of your psyche, and in doing so, you reclaim parts of yourself that were lost or buried. There is a difference between reacting and responding, and reflection is what makes that difference possible. A reactive mind is impulsive, easily triggered, driven by ego and emotion. A reflective mind pauses, considers, and then acts with clarity. When you reflect, you slow down the internal machinery of habit. You ask, why did I respond that way? What belief was I operating from? Was that truly my voice? Or was I echoing someone else's expectations? These questions are not indulgent, they are transformative. They break the spell of unconscious behavior and awaken the possibility of choice. Most people leave on the surface. They know what they want, but not why. They chase goals without questioning whether those goals truly matter. They conform to social norms without asking who created those norms and whether they serve the soul. Reflection invites you beneath the surface. It takes you into the hidden layers of motivation, into the architecture of your inner world. And once you see what lies there, you are no longer blindly influenced by it. You begin to live with intention. You begin to act from alignment rather than compulsion. When you reflect consistently, your self-awareness deepens. You begin to notice patterns, not just in your external life, but in your inner reactions. You see how certain situations always trigger the same responses. You notice how your self-doubt appears in specific contexts, how your fear of failure drives certain behaviors, how your need for approval shapes your decisions. This is not about self-criticism, it is about self-liberation, because once you see a pattern, you are no longer trapped by it. You can choose a new path, you can rewrite the script. Reflection also creates emotional intelligence. When you reflect on your feelings, rather than suppressing or reacting to them, you begin to understand them. You see that anger often hides sadness, that fear masks vulnerability, that pride covers insecurity. You learn to name your emotions, to trace their origins, and to meet them with compassion. This emotional clarity allows you to navigate life with greater wisdom. You become less reactive, more grounded, more centered in who you are. And this presence sets you apart. It gives you power in situations where others collapse into chaos. To reflect is also to return to your values. In a world that constantly tries to define your worth by your productivity, your appearance, or your possessions, reflection brings you back to what truly matters. It reminds you that integrity is more valuable than image, that depth is more meaningful than popularity, that peace is more precious than approval. These truths are easy to forget in the noise of the world, but in the stillness of reflection, they rise to the surface. They guide your decisions, they shape your path, they align your outer life with your inner truth. Reflection is an act of self-respect. It is saying, my life matters enough to examine. My thoughts are worth understanding. My experiences are valuable not just for what they achieved, but for what they taught me. This mindset builds dignity. It anchors you in your own worth, independent of what others think. And from this rooted place, you begin to grow not for validation, but for actualization. You no longer chase success as a substitute for self-esteem. You create, achieve, and evolve because it is your nature to do so. There is no shortcut to this kind of growth. You cannot buy it, fake it, or outsource it. You must live it. You must be willing to pause in the midst of a busy world and ask yourself, what am I learning? What am I becoming? What do I need to release? What do I need to reclaim? These questions will not always yield immediate answers, but they will open doorways. They will create space for new insights to arise, often in the most unexpected moments. In the shower, during a walk, in a quiet morning before the world wakes up. And this is the beauty of reflection. It softens the noise of life and amplifies the voice of the soul. It creates space for inner guidance, for intuitive knowing, for the whispers of wisdom that often get drowned out in the rush of doing. When you make reflection a daily practice, you begin to live in conversation with yourself. You begin to trust your inner voice more than external noise. You move from reaction to response, from habit to presence, from surface to depth. Over time, this reflective practice reshapes your entire life. You become more deliberate in your choices, more resilient in your challenges, more fulfilled in your journey. You learn faster because you process deeper. You evolve faster because you integrate more. You rise not by force, but by alignment. And this is what places you ahead. Not in competition with others, but in communion with your highest potential. The world may never reward you for your reflections. It may not notice your inner shifts or celebrate your silent insights, but your soul will, your energy will. Your life will begin to reflect the clarity within you. And slowly, without fanfare, you will rise, not above others, but into the fullness of who you are. This is the quiet revolution of reflection. This is the path walked by the rare few who choose awareness over autopilot, depth over distraction, and meaning over noise. The person who commits to personal growth every day walks a narrow path, one not often traveled by the masses. It is not paved with applause, nor is it lit by external validation. It is walked mostly in solitude, guided by an inner compass that points toward a deeper truth. To stay ahead of 99% of people, you must develop the self-discipline to walk this path, even when it is difficult, especially when it is uncomfortable. Growth requires discipline, not the kind enforced from the outside, but the kind that arises from an internal vow. A promise to yourself that you will not settle for mediocrity, that you will not live asleep, that you will not allow comfort to choke your potential. This kind of discipline is a sacred force. It sharpens the mind, strengthens the will, and purifies the heart. Without it, growth is merely a wish. With it, growth becomes inevitable. Self-discipline is the act of making choices aligned with your highest self, even when your lower self resists. It means getting up to study when you'd rather sleep. It means facing the truth when you'd rather look away. It means saying no to temporary pleasures that sabotage long-term fulfillment. Discipline does not restrict you, it liberates you. It cuts away distractions so that you can focus your energy. It creates boundaries that protect your time and mind. It transforms you from a wanderer into a warrior, not one who fights others, but one who confronts and overcomes their own limitations. Most people wait to feel motivated before taking action. But the disciplined person understands that motivation is fleeting. It rises and falls like the tide. It is unreliable. Discipline, on the other hand, is steady. It shows up regardless of feeling. It acts not out of excitement, but out of commitment. The disciplined person does what is necessary even when it's difficult, because they are not ruled by moods. They are governed by purpose, and in a world where most people are controlled by impulses, this ability to act with consistency is what sets you apart. Every day, life will offer you a choice to stay the same or to grow. Discipline is the force that chooses growth again and again. It resists the temptation to remain in the familiar, to indulge the ego, to cling to old stories. It says, "I will rise," not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. And this rising is not always grand. Often it is subtle. It looks like reading when no one is watching, like journaling through confusion, like asking for help, like taking one small step forward when everything in you wants to freeze. These acts may seem insignificant, but repeated daily, they transform you from the inside out. Discipline is also about protection. Your mind is your most sacred space. Without discipline, it becomes a playground for chaos, distractions, toxic influences, shallow entertainment. These things seep in and distort your vision. You begin to lose clarity. You forget who you are, but when you discipline your attention, when you guard what you consume, who you associate with, and how you spend your time, you reclaim your power. You no longer allow the outer world to dictate your inner world. You take responsibility for your environment, and in doing so, you take responsibility for your destiny. This internal order brings a kind of peace that chaos cannot offer. It is the peace of knowing you are aligned, that your actions match your values, that your time is not wasted, but invested. It's the peace of going to bed knowing you've honored your purpose today, even in small ways. Most people crave this peace, but look for it in the wrong places. In achievement, in relationships, in possessions. But true peace is the fruit of inner discipline. It grows quietly but steadily in the soul of the committed. Self-discipline also teaches you humility. In the process of growth, you will face resistance. You will fail, falter, and fall short of your own standards. But discipline says, try again, get up, keep going. Through this repetition, you realize that growth is not about perfection. It's about persistence. You begin to see that mastery is not a single act, but a continuous surrender to the process. Discipline strips away arrogance and replaces it with resilience. You don't walk around claiming superiority. You simply walk with quiet confidence, knowing you've done the work. There will be days when nothing seems to be changing, when your efforts feel invisible, when progress is slow. This is where most people quit. They stop reading, stop training, stop reflecting, because they've attached their efforts to immediate results. But discipline operates differently. It is not attached to outcome. It is loyal to the process. It trusts that small, consistent actions lead to massive transformation over time. The disciplined person does not stop when it gets hard. They dig deeper. They find strength not in circumstances, but in commitment. And this commitment becomes a kind of sacred rhythm. You begin to find beauty in repetition, meaning in consistency. What once felt like effort becomes a way of being. You no longer need to force yourself to grow. It becomes who you are. A person who sharpens their mind every day, who holds themselves accountable, who chooses growth over comfort, truth over illusion, purpose over distraction. And in this way, self-discipline evolves from a practice into a path, a lifelong path of becoming. Discipline also helps you navigate your emotional world. It teaches you to feel without being ruled by feeling. You can be afraid and still act. You can be uncertain and still move forward. You can be discouraged and still keep going. This emotional sovereignty is rare. Most people are slaves to their emotions. They act out of anger, withdraw out of fear, quit out of doubt. But the disciplined person listens to emotion without obeying it blindly. They sit with their feelings, understand them, and then choose the most aligned action. This inner stability is what allows them to weather storms while others are thrown off course. There is also a sacred joy that arises from discipline, a quiet, steady joy that does not depend on applause or reward. It is the joy of self-respect, of knowing you are doing what you said you would do, of knowing you are becoming who you are meant to be. It is not loud or flashy, but it is unshakable. It carries you through difficult seasons. It roots you in your own worth. And this joy cannot be bought, imitated, or faked. It must be earned through daily discipline. In a world obsessed with shortcuts and instant gratification, discipline is revolutionary. It says, I will not take the easy path. I will not sacrifice long-term vision for short-term comfort. I will not betray my potential for the sake of convenience. This mindset places you in a category of your own. It makes you reliable in a world of inconsistency, grounded in a world of distraction, purposeful in a world of aimlessness. Self-discipline is not about denying yourself joy. It is about creating a deeper joy, one rooted in integrity and alignment. It is not about rigidity or self-punishment. It is about structure that supports freedom. Because the more disciplined you are, the freer you become, free from addiction, from chaos, from regret, from dependency. You are free to create, to serve, to lead, to love, not from emptiness, but from overflow. And so, each day, you choose discipline, not because you have to, but because you get to. Because in choosing discipline, you are choosing your higher self. You are choosing to honor your mind, your time, your calling. You are choosing to grow into the person your soul knows you can be. And that choice, repeated daily, with sincerity and courage, is what makes you uncommon, not better than others, but better than who you were yesterday. And in that sacred comparison lies true mastery. The journey of self-education is not merely a personal pursuit, it is a sacred duty. When you make the decision to grow every single day, you are not just improving your life, you are aligning yourself with something eternal. You are stepping into the stream of evolution itself, the unfolding of potential that is built into the very structure of existence. And when you dedicate yourself to this path of inner mastery, it is only natural that, over time, you will begin to lead, not by desire, but by design. Leadership is not something you chase. True leadership is the byproduct of transformation. It emerges when your presence becomes a mirror in which others begin to see their own truth. And to arrive at such a place, you must first master the art of educating yourself daily, not to boast knowledge, but to embody wisdom. Most people imagine leadership as a position, a title, a spotlight, a role bestowed upon them by others. But real leadership is not positional, it is foundational. It begins in the quiet spaces where no one is watching. It is born in the discipline to read when others are distracted, to reflect while others react, to choose depth when the world rewards surface. The one who leads does not rise through manipulation or performance, but through authenticity, through consistency, through the daily, invisible work of aligning thought, word, and action. And this kind of leadership cannot be faked. It is not charisma or cleverness. It is clarity. People are drawn to clarity because it is rare. They are magnetized by someone who knows who they are and where they are going, and such clarity is not gifted. It is cultivated day by day. When you educate yourself every day, you begin to see patterns that others miss. You begin to connect ideas that seemed unrelated. You gain insights that are not available to the average mind, simply because the average mind is asleep. And when others are lost in confusion, you become the one who sees clearly, not because you are superior, but because you have trained yourself to think, to observe, to inquire. In a culture of speed, you become still. In a culture of opinion, you become rooted in principle. This depth of perception naturally elevates you to the level of a guide, someone others look to when they are lost. But leadership is not about having the answers. It is about carrying the right questions. The leader is the one who continually asks, what is true? What is necessary? What is next? These questions are not asked once. They are lived. And only a person committed to daily growth, to relentless self-inquiry, can bear the weight of such questions. You do not lead by pretending to know. You lead by being brave enough to search. And your search becomes the light that others follow, not because you impose it upon them, but because truth, when embodied, becomes irresistible. To educate yourself is to take responsibility for your consciousness. To lead others is to take responsibility for theirs, not by controlling them, but by awakening them, and this begins with example. If you cannot govern your own mind, how can you guide anyone else? If you are not expanding, how can you lift others? The one who educates himself daily begins to radiate a presence, a calm, clear, focused energy. This energy becomes a container in which others feel safe to explore themselves. They see you walk through fear with courage, and they remember their own strength. They watch you choose integrity over popularity, and they are reminded of their own values. This is the unseen power of the inner leader. True leadership is not rooted in ego. It is rooted in service. And the more you grow, the more you realize this path is not about you. It is about becoming the vessel through which something greater can flow. Wisdom is not something you possess. It is something that moves through you when you are empty enough, humble enough, silent enough to receive it. And to reach this point, you must have walked through the fire of transformation again and again. You must have dismantled your illusions, faced your shadows, and come out not with pride, but with presence. The world is full of noise. Everyone is trying to be heard, to be seen, to be recognized, but the leader is not the loudest voice. It is the most resonant one. Resonance comes from alignment, from the fact that your words match your life, that your teachings are not theories but lived truths. When people sense this integrity, they listen, not just with their ears but with their hearts. They may not even understand why they are drawn to you, but they are. Because real leadership bypasses logic and touches something sacred in the soul. As you continue to educate yourself, your awareness expands. You begin to see that every human being is walking a path of potential, that behind every behavior is a story, that beneath every fear is a longing. This compassionate seeing is the foundation of leadership. It allows you to guide without judging, to correct without condemning, to inspire without manipulating. You become a space where others can rise, not by being pulled, but by being seen. But leadership also requires courage. The courage to speak truth in a world that fears it. The courage to stand alone when necessary. The courage to confront not just external problems, but internal contradictions. The more you grow, the more responsible you become for your impact. Your influence is no longer neutral. It shapes lives. And so you must be vigilant, not out of fear, but out of love. You must tend to your inner world like a sacred temple, knowing that what lives there will echo out into the world. And yet, the most powerful leaders are not those who seek followers. They are those who ignite leaders in others. They do not create dependency. They awaken autonomy. They do not demand loyalty. They inspire sovereignty. This, too, is a result of daily self-education. Because as you evolve, you recognize that your gift is not your knowledge. It is your ability to awaken the knowledge already sleeping within others. You become a mirror, not a master, a torch, not a throne. Eventually, leadership stops being something you do, and it becomes something you are. It is in your silence, your presence, your listening. You lead in the way you respond to conflict, in the way you stay calm in chaos, in the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. You lead by who you are becoming, and who you are becoming is shaped every day by what you feed your mind, how you challenge your beliefs, how you elevate your thinking. Leadership does not always come with titles. It is often unacknowledged, uncelebrated, but it is always felt in families, in communities, in moments of crisis. The one who has trained their mind daily, who has purified their intentions, who has remained faithful to the path even when unseen, this is the one people turn to when the illusions fall away. This is the one who stands steady in storms. Not because they are superhuman, but because they have practiced steadiness every single day. You may not see the impact of your growth immediately. You may not feel like a leader. But every moment you choose education over distraction, awareness over reaction, purpose over comfort, you are stepping into a legacy that goes beyond success. You are becoming someone whose life will ripple through generations. Not by force, but by example, not by status, but by spirit. The question is not whether the world needs more leaders, it does. The question is whether you will become one, not for the sake of power, but for the sake of awakening. Your own and others, and it begins, as it always has, in the quiet moment when you choose once again to grow, to listen, to learn, to rise. That choice, repeated daily, is what separates the 1% from the rest. That choice is what makes you a leader, not someday, but now. In the end, your daily commitment to educate yourself is not just a private journey of growth. It is a sacred responsibility to the world. You are not here merely to survive, follow trends, or blend into the background of mediocrity. You are here to awaken, to remember who you truly are, and as you grow, quietly, consistently, and courageously, you illuminate the path for others to do the same. You do not need permission to lead. You do not need a title to teach. Your life is your message, your actions your sermon, your transformation your greatest gift. While the world chases shortcuts and applause, you are choosing the uncommon road, where discipline meets purpose, where learning becomes leadership, where each day shapes not only your future, but the future of those around you. So rise, not with arrogance, but with resolve. Rise with the humility of one who learns and the strength of one who serves. In a world that is drifting, you be the anchor. In a world that forgets, you be the reminder. And when others look back and wonder how you rose above 99% of people, let the answer be simple. You chose to grow every single day.